Hi everyone. Thanks for joining us again in our annual gathering. And today I'll be talking about the Planck constant, Planck scale, implosion, perfected solution for charge collapse. And we'll go over some basic definitions that Dan covers in his teachings, like implosion, charge collapse, constructive wave interference, and their place in the universal scaling system. And I want to start with a universal understanding of ancient teachings, some principles, esoteric understandings. And according to those esoteric and mystic understandings, there are some things that we can change in life, and there are some things that we cannot. Like the things that we can change are our feelings, emotions, and thus our perception of the reality and our reality to a certain extent. And the things that we cannot change are the rules of the universe, like the yin and yang, or the cycles of time, or the correspondence principle, and so on. And some of those principles tie into what we are teaching in this conference, and also what we are developing with Dan and Patrick and others. And one of those core principles is the golden ratio along with fractality. And this is something that Euclid also touched upon in his famous quote. He says, "The laws of the nature are but the mathematical thoughts of God," because they are set in the universe, and we cannot really change them, but we can understand them. If we can understand the rules of the universe, the things that we cannot change, then we can have a better effect on the things that we can change, like our lives, our life quality, and the technologies that we develop. We can contribute to the world, to humanity, in a better way if we can understand these principles. And these principles in this lecture start with fractality. This is also something that Dan is extensively using in his technologies. So the fractality is a discipline in the universe which requires two qualities, which are self-similarity and repetition in a given system. This means the system has to be similar in each other. The pieces of the system has to be similar to each other, and it has to be similar to its whole. And that also brings repetition. It has to repeat itself. And there are some examples in the picture here. You can see the branching of the systems, or waves, or the repeating patterns. They all look like each other. There is self-similarity and repetition. These are all fractal systems, and we can call this also scale invariance or self-embedding. And in nature, we see the fractal patterns everywhere. Cauliflower, broccoli is one of those systems that we see similar patterns repeat themselves in different scales. Some examples from nature. So these can be spiraling forms or different forms that look like they repeat each other. In this image you can see that there is the main river channel, and it spreads out to smaller and smaller arms. This is also a dendritic form. And ancients have understood this and implied this in their temples, in their temple design, which represents the universe, consciousness, psychology, and actually everything. From a mathematical perspective, they take a simple first basic geometric form, and then they apply it in smaller scales to create a fractal temple. And there are many examples in African cultures as well. We can see these geometric patterns repeating continuously. And Ron Eglash has done extensive research on this, and presentations are available on YouTube. And we also see those systems, fractal systems, have similar repeating patterns in the evolution of Islamic geometric patterns. You see that the top three geometric systems, they belong to the Abbasi Caliphate, and then the middle part belongs to the Seljuks, and the bottom three belong to the Ottoman period. And you will notice that these geometric patterns, compositions, they get more complex and more advanced as time passes. This also represents the evolution of consciousness in time. We see it is being reflected in the mathematical representation of those patterns. The first example of these patterns are available in the Great Mosque of Kairouan in Tunisia, 670 during the Abbasi Caliphate period. And you can see the patterns reflecting the four-way mixing phase conjugate principles. Actually, in Islamic architecture and Islamic patterns, the geometries reflect the understanding of the universe and the God, which is a self-similar subject, and the center point representing also the implosion point, the charge collapse point. And so in Islamic traditions, it was forbidden to draw personalities in their temples or sacred sites, and because they understood the real mathematics or the principle of universe was being coded inside the geometric understanding. So they were more focused on the representations of geometry in their temples. Some examples from Islamic geometric forms. And also this was covered in the mystical tradition in Sufism, in the concept called the unity of being, which encourages people to look for God inside oneself and perceive the whole universe, including oneself, as the reflection of God. And according to this according to this philosophy, the universe on the micro level is a holographic model whose source is the energy, just like the neurons in the brain. On a cosmic scale, from the fractal and holographic universe perspective, this means that each part of the world contains the whole of the universe as it's hidden inside each part. In Sufism, the divine secret is the realization of the unity of the God, human, the universe. The creator and the creation and everything is actually one. It has no beginning and no end. And the whole universe and the human being is God's representation in different forms. The universe and the human being is a perception that reflects God's similarity. And here we see the qualities of a fractal system, self-similar and repetitive. And this understanding is also being covered in the esoteric tradition of Christianity, in Hermetism as well. In the Emerald Tablets, it says, that which is below corresponds to that which is above, and that which is above corresponds to that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of the one thing. So in all esoteric and mystic traditions, the same principles are being covered in different forms and ways. And we see the same understanding in biology. You can see the starting from the left, lymphatic system, blood circulation, lungs, and the neural system, all sharing dendritic patterns, fractal systems. And there is a great similarity between the neurons and the organization of superclusters in the universe. There is a famous study that was done in Brandeis University displaying the incredible similarities between the qualities of the neural interactions, pathways, and the connections of superclusters on a cosmic scale. So this brings us to another subject, asking, is the universe part of a larger mind? And we even have the signs of this in specific articles. This was done, I think, in 2017, covers the consciousness in the universe is scale invariant and implies an event horizon of the human brain. And we can envision this as the perfect embedding in toroidal form. The concept of fractality was developed by certain characters in time. One of those is Buckminster Fuller, who is an American architect, systems theorist, author, designer, and inventor. He designed the geodesic dome, and Dan also has, I believe, experience with him. If you want to say a couple of words about him.
Yeah, he had taught at University of Detroit Architecture School. He was a character. And then we had a fabulous conference in Florence, Italy, with him to help carry the dome of stories to tell. He was almost as crotchety as me. The thing is, he really understood efficiency of material, but he did not have a concept of life force. So, you know, he could study the material usage efficiency, but to find out that those metal geodesics actually are geopathic. And that was something beyond those Bucky Fuller people. So we have to take this further.
And also, we have to talk about Benoit Mandelbrot, who brought the idea of fractality to modern society, I think in 1979, while he was working on a mathematical error in the IBM internal communication systems. He realized that the error itself looked like a fractal system which was not really within the consciousness of the modern society before. It was known by the ancients, but this was something that was forgotten. And during Mandelbrot's discovery of this interesting fractal error, he formalized this and made this concept popularized. He helped it popularize during the end of 70s, early 80s, and especially in the American culture, people started having T-shirts and caps with fractal patterns, and it was like a boom of fractal understanding. And there are some other examples of fractal patterns. The one on the top, Cantor said, actually was something very similar to what Mandelbrot found in the internal communication systems. So this was the error of what he found. As he got closer to the error, as he zoomed in to the problem, he saw a repeating pattern. So that triggered his discovery and his mathematical formulation. And some other examples. And this is the famous Mandelbrot set. After he formalized this mathematical error, he generated these patterns which became very popular.
And actually, golden ratio is built into the Mandelbrot set.
Yeah.
Right. Also, golden ratio was exactly built in to that formula. And even the New Scientist magazine covered the concept of fractal universe. And we see the examples of fractal universe from the quantum scale to cosmic scales. We see the interaction of waves emitted by the electrons done by Yazdani group project in Princeton University. Another example, scientists discover fractal patterns in a quantum material. So we talk that the fractal system repeats itself. As we get closer and closer, the same pattern repeats itself. So this is true for all mathematical fractal systems. In nature, we call this self-similarity because it is never 100% similar to each other. There are small variations, but it very much looks like each other, which defines itself as self-similar. And the important thing about the fractal systems is that when we apply golden ratio specifically to a fractal system, then the system changes its qualities and becomes negentropic and available for good health, and it becomes self-organizing. And so this golden ratio perfected fractal charge collapse is the fundamental formula of this universe as first presented by Dan Winter, which is the electric origin, cause, and mechanism of all centripetal and self-organizing forces, including and especially gravity, life force, perception, bliss, enlightenment, end of addiction, ADD, alphabet, and symbol and color. So understanding golden ratio is very crucial for developing fractal systems, because when we do this with the golden ratio, it becomes negentropic and helpful for biological systems. And it also organizes, it gains the ability to organize itself, which is called self-organization in systems like biology, DNA, solar system, and even the universe. So then we have to look at the golden ratio a little bit, which is an infinite number, starts with 1.618, and the history goes back to the Egyptians and the Sumerians, and basically from a mathematical understanding, this is a relationship between two systems. And when the golden ratio is applied to two systems, then harmony is automatically generated. If you get 1 unit of length and divide it from the golden ratio point, you get two sections. And the smaller piece to the larger piece is proportionate in the same way the larger piece to the whole, which creates harmony. And golden ratio is the only ratio which creates this specific harmony where the ratios are the same, thus allowing a charge collapse quality to the system or self-organization, and becomes a constructive wave interference. If the system has multiple golden ratio relationships inside in a fractal way, then we can see that the waves organize in a negentropic way and creates constructive wave interference. For this, the golden ratio has two qualities, arithmetic mean and geometric mean. And these are the two qualities that only golden ratio have in the whole universe of mathematics. As said, in this way, waves agree to meet in the perfect points to create this self-organizing principle. And we can see this in the geometry of the star, that the lengths and the segments relationship to each other is golden ratio. There are multiple systems. I'll just continue maybe a little faster now. And when we look at the implosive charge collapse, we see a repeating pattern here, a pentagon and the star, and it's being continued as you get closer to the center. And at the center, there is the exact point where you have the longitudinal array. We will talk about this a little later. But we have to understand that this geometry presents the most necessary phase conjugate visual understanding, which includes the golden ratio principles and geometries going towards the center. It's very easy to understand because all segments are connected to each other in a harmonious way through golden ratio, so that waves find the perfect way to agree meeting with each other while going through the center without disruption. And this stabilizes gravity, as we see in starting from the quantum fields. And this research brought the Nobel Prize, Quantum Criticality in Ionizing Chain, Experimental Evidence for Emergent E8 Symmetry, which also has golden ratio inside.
In fact, it's been said the E8 is a superset of what is the star mother kit.
Yes. And this is being used in nanotechnology because golden ratio is crucial in molecular biology as well. Researchers are working on ways to implement this understanding in molecular nanotechnology.
That previous slide, the first, golden mean as a driving force of self-assembly. That's beautiful.
Right, golden mean as a driving force of self-assembly.
Beautiful.
And this is a recent article from Harry Kahn. And in this article also describes the mathematical discovery that shows all irrational square roots of the natural numbers and even constants pi can be expressed with algebraic terms that only contain constant phi and 1. Therefore, it is logical to assume that constant phi, which also defines the structure of the Platonic solids, must be the fundamental constant that defies the structure of the atomic nucleus.
And there's a slide on that from chemist Moon, specifically the nuclear hadron's nest as a Platonic nest, which is charge collapse. That's the point.
Right. And this one is from our geometric models poster. You can see at the bottom part the relationship between the Venus and Earth orbit presents a perfect star. So this is a perfect example of what stabilizes gravity. And we see this golden ratio relationship among all members of the solar system, which is also extensively covered in the Spira Solaris website, spirasolaris.ca. You can see all planets in the solar system are connected through golden ratio with mathematical calculations. Also present inside the human body and brainwaves. flamingmind.com from Dan Winter and Patrick Boddy. Also, you can measure the brainwaves and see that when you are in a blissful state, your brainwave tunes with the golden ratio, the peak frequencies of your brainwave in beta, alpha, delta, and theta. And also in our DNA. Our DNA is full of golden ratio proportions. This is also from the Sacred Geometry poster. The number of harmonics in your DNA fractal antenna ascend by golden ratio when the spin density braid implosion enables that compression to be implosive, negentropic, and centripetal as defined by Dan Winter. also the concept charge distribution efficiency contains golden ratio in the form of Fibonacci series. And we have covered in our previous lectures that the Fibonacci series has a specific function in the nature that uses the whole numbers to perfect itself towards golden ratio. The number of petals or the branching systems or the leaves, number of leaves, they are arranged in a specific way by using whole numbers in the Fibonacci sequence. And this is being used by sound engineers as well, by designing their space for the musical experiences. So the best sound experience is achieved by building the space in relation to golden ratio. For example, you are an architect and you want to build a room for musical experience, and you have the length of the room and the width of the room. If you take at least 2 dimensions of the room and just apply it to golden ratio, and then you will avoid the standing waves, which is something that is unwanted for the musical listener, that creates the disruption in specific frequencies. So this is called a Stradivarius phi chamber. And we did go over the Fibonacci series. We can go a little faster here. This has been used in temple design, in churches, mosques, many different places. These are being measured by the harmonizer available here. You will see that the proportions of the churches, this one is the Matthias Church in the Budapest, is specifically arranged in golden ratio. And when we travel in Europe, I take my harmonizer with me, and when I see a small model of a church or temple, I always start measuring it to see whether there is golden ratio. And without exception, in each one of those old temples and churches and mosques, I find golden ratio in everywhere, between the columns, between the room organization. So there's a specific reason why this hidden principle was used in temple design as well. As we went over, sound gives the optimum experience as well as intention. So intention was used in these places. So the meditation work or the intentional work that was being done in these centers were very important, and it was best achieved through a space designed in golden ratio. So the understanding of this goes back to even the Egyptians and Sumerians, and we see the first example in the tablet of Shamash. So this has the exact dimensions of the tablet of Shamash, and you will see that the tablet of Shamash has 3 golden ratio rectangles inside. The first rectangle is, let me show it here, right here. This is the first golden ratio rectangle, and the second one, and the third one is the whole golden ratio rectangle itself. So there are 3 golden ratio rectangles embedded perfectly within each other, and this cannot be by chance. There is no way. If you get one system in a golden ratio proportion, you can argue that it can be a chance. The second system, 3 systems together, no way. So they knew about this, and there was a specific reason why they implied this to the tablet of Shamash, the sun god. So I believe the reason was to increase the effect of the understanding and principle of this tablet of Shamash and embed it in the land.
You're going to do the 1 foot in there, aren't you?
Yes, we'll come to there. Spoiler alert. So, yeah. The interesting thing about the tablet of Shamash, another interesting thing is that it didn't only have the ratio, but it had the scale. So they also scaled it to the Planck constant. So you can have different golden ratio systems. Not all of them necessarily have to be scaled to the Planck scale. The difference of scaling it to the Planck and not is aligning with the universe, with the universal force, which creates charge collapse and implosion. So this is the key difference that we are covering here and in our technologies.
And thus sacred space.
And sacred space, right. So when any golden ratio system is specifically aligned to the Planck constant, then the magic and miracle happens. This can be applied to frequency, to length, to space, to time, which is called in science Planck time, Planck space, Planck length, or generally Planck constant. So when you scale the system to Planck constant perfectly, then it becomes negentropic and it becomes healthy for life. It supports health. It creates self-organization. And this is what we are trying to achieve with the technologies that we are developing. And this was being applied to the tablet of Shamash. And the dimensions that I just showed you are perfectly in line with the Planck scale, Planck length. And you can see the formulas that I designed and wrote on the sides of this tablet, on the sides here. For example, this one is Planck length times golden ratio to the power of 162. And when you look at this rectangular, the short side is exactly Planck length times to the golden ratio to the power of 161. So 161, 162, 163, and 164, which is 1 foot.
John Michel was our hero when we were young, and his life was dedicated to proving that the meter was obscene and the British measuring system, as he said, the foot was sacred. And actually he was right, because it was charged well.
So you can see here that sacred space defined by implosive charge collapse, which our ancestors knew. And the longer side of the tablet of Shamash is 1 foot, 30.37 centimeters. And there is a small difference in length in the tablet of Shamash, and we can say that this might be the result of the depreciation of the tablet over time. And as you get to smaller scales in the tablet of Shamash, you will see the same understanding repeats itself until 159, 158. You'll see that same scale is being continued in perfect relationship to Planck constant, Planck length. And you can find those puzzles over there if you want. And this subject has been covered during the Renaissance period. All the artists during the Renaissance period were extensively interested in golden ratio, and almost all of them have implemented this understanding in their artwork. I'm going to present just a few examples here. These are just endless. And charge collapse on Earth is being stabilized through an energy grid. So this is the exact dodeca-icosa energy grid model of the world, which stabilizes gravity, which is extensively covered in Dan's presentations, which he will also talk about. So this is the precise geometric model of negentropy, literally fractal conjugate spacetime, and all phase conjugation and fusion, and perfected fractality.
And we'll get to the longitudinal array, that's what that implies, and also that all sacred dimension, both frequency and length, thus are defined by charge collapse, because that's what enables the implosion that we call sacred.
Yes. And charge collapse in space. We just went over the Stradivarius 5 chambers, how a simple organization of architectural understanding ratios create the perfect experience to listen to music, for example. Let's get the questions after the presentation, if it's okay. And this is also covered in Kepler's work as well. In his solar system model, he displayed the principle of charge collapse in the solar system by applying nested Platonic solids. And more technically, he used a cube and a tetrahedron to explain the relationship between Saturn and Jupiter, and then a tetrahedron and a dodecahedron, Jupiter and Mars, and then dodecahedron and icosahedron for Mars and Earth, and icosahedron, octahedron for Earth, Venus, and Mercury. This is what actually created the gravitational force of the sun that holds the system together. This is also covered in Moon's chemical work. Famous chemist Moon. And this also brings us to the famous quotation that is attributed to Pythagoras. There is geometry in the humming of the strings. There is music in the spacing of the spheres, which explains the intricate relationship between geometry and music and spheres. Another article that covers the shape of the universe. So what they did is they took a sample of the heat mapping of the universe, and they applied different geometries to see which one fit perfectly. And they noticed only one geometry, a 3D model, fit perfectly to this universal picture, which was a dodecahedron. A perfect fractal system is the shape of the universe. And Nature magazine covered this article and brought it their cover. So we suggest the universe is both fractal and in the form of a dodecahedron based in golden ratio. Some examples from fractal geometries. And another recent article, you might have, you may remember this recently, displayed the most amazing and clear picture of a black hole. And this was in 2017. And the next year, they, with better techniques, with the telescope, they developed a better image of that black hole in a vortex field. But what was interesting is that in the earlier article by Harry Kahn, he also analyzed that black hole, and he noticed something different that they did not cover in the earlier magazines or earlier articles. What they did was they just took this part and cropped the rest. They didn't show the rest. They just focused on this part. So this picture that you see is the cropped version of this part only. They didn't show you the rest. But when you analyze the rest of the picture, you can see that on the top right, a slightly distracted dodecahedral pattern can fit there. It is a little bit disturbed because of the gravitational field. But actually, there is a dodecahedral pattern. And this shows the compression field also in relation to golden ratio and dodecahedron, what we have been teaching in the form of perfect fractal charge collapse symmetry. So we see charge compression in 2D on the left, which is called cymatics, and in 3D we call this implosion. And we can visualize this as multiple vortex fields starting from the surfaces of each side going towards center. What creates the gravity? Another example to this is the concept of superatoms. Now, superatoms have elevated qualities like superconductivity and zero electrical resistance. Their electron valence systems is specifically arranged in dodeca-icosa systems, which automatically generate golden ratio and explains us why superconductivity or zero electrical resistance is achieved through golden ratio. This is something that your chemist teacher might not told you. And charge collapse in architecture, famous quotation from our best teacher, perfect compression creates perfect charge distribution. As we covered earlier, this understanding of symmetry is applied in multiple temples over time.
Which eventually will define heaven.
Yes. And even in Stonehenge and other geometric understandings. So the core principle is also covered in our poster. Phi is the only ratio which allows wavelengths to both add and multiply constructively, as explained by Dan Winter. So again, this is the only ratio in mathematics that allows wavelength to both add and multiply. There is no other ratio, so it's actually quite simple. And so, again, talking about Planck constant, mathematically it's being described in Wikipedia, you can check it. And as we said, when systems are specifically tuned to Planck constant, they create charge collapse. And this implosive compression through golden ratio perfected phase conjugation at fractal nodes. And in those specific fractal nodes, we can visualize this as the meeting points of the waves. In each of those fractal nodes, there is this implosive effect which benefits the health and biology. Those fractal nodes can be applied to different systems, length, time, frequency, and when you apply it to frequency, you can use it in healing systems, as we are doing it with the piezo-fire. The frequency system that is being fed through the piezo-fire transducers are specifically those fractal nodes. So it is perfectly focused only on those nodes to benefit health. And the same nodes can be visualized in Dan's famous chart, which shows the universal frequency cascade tuned to Planck, where you get all the very critical biological mechanics as well as the celestial heavenly bodies, systems. And Planck tuner that I developed, invented with the help of Dan Winter, is the first ruler that measures the Planck scale, golden ratio perfected Planck scale between 2 centimeters and 35 centimeters technically. And as we said, tablet of Shamash has those measurements perfectly. We went over these, so I'm going a little faster now. Also referencing to John Michel's work of City of Revelation. So you can technically measure the scales of the tablet of Shamash with the Planck tuner, and when the line on the Planck tuner is aligned with the shorter segment, you will get the exact dimensions of this Planck scale technically, which is available over there. And this one, the understanding of Planck scale was also covered by the Eastern Roman Empire in Hagia Sophia. Now this is the coronation place where the dominant diameters of the spheres were in line with the Planck scale preliminary measurements by myself. So this picture is from Casey House, also the graphic designer of some of our artwork. In the fractal dodecaecosa system, you will see that the Planck scaling is perfectly included in the geometry here. As you see the purple dodecahedron, you will see that it is being stellated from the sides like a star. And in each stellation, you will find all the dimensions of the Planck scale on the left at the top. So as you go to the tip of that geometry, you will reach to the Planck node, the longitudinal array. This is why the dodecaecosa fractal system is the perfect system for the universe. This is why they found this geometry perfectly embedded with the picture of the universe as displayed in the Nature magazine. So I hope I was able to explain you the intricate relationship between the Planck scale and the universe. Our educational set includes Dan's book and those understandings which are related to Planck scale. You can find them here. And thanks for listening to this presentation.